what always happens is in the start of the recording is me swearing about the transcript and how awfully it handles a Kiwi accent. And then I'm going to share my screen, which I forgot to do the other day until about halfway through that somebody told me I wasn't sharing my screen. So I've remembered to do it this time. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our standard icebreaker. And then we're going to go through a little bit of housekeeping just to make sure that we're all on the same page. They're going to talk about data quality, what consistency, completeness, and accuracy means. And if we get a chance, we're going to talk a little bit about metadata. And then we're going to throw some stuff in. The thoughts from last time is that metadata might need its own meeting because by the time we got through data consistency, completeness, and accuracy and quality, we'd run through all of the meeting and we didn't get a chance to talk about metadata. So if the same happens today, we will definitely do a little corner on metadata. I'm just going to take that away. And what we're going to do, I'm just going to get the people list up. I'm going to go from the top down. So Andrew, you're going to be the first one up after me. So we're going to do name, pronoun, where we're from. And the question today is, will demand responsive transport save us? You can answer with save us from what do you think demand responsive transport is, and any thoughts on that. So, hey, I'm Dr. J, use they as a pronoun. I'm from DFT. I'm the hand-wavy cartoon drawer who is running NaPTAN. Will demand responsive transport save us? Being in London, I'm not entirely sure that it would save us. And it's also save us from what? I think it might be a good idea for some of the less populated areas, but I can't see it working other than for accessible transport with dial-a-ride working well within London. So, Andrew Stokes, you're the first one up. Oh, you're on mute, Andrew. You're very bright and energetic, but on mute.
I know, I was right in there as well. Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Stokes. I go by him. I am from Transport Scotland, so I work as a product development officer with regards to our reimbursement systems for the concessionary transport. So obviously we've got an interest in NaPTAN data to see if it can improve the quality of that and how we get our data through and how we put it back out to operators and things like that. And will demand responsive transport save us? Not entirely sure is my answer.
I love the very consultant answer. It depends. Andy Hole, you're the next one up.
Hi, I'm Andy Hole. I am a he. I'm the data development manager for National PTI. Demand responsive, I think it will cost a fortune, as it always does every 4 or 5 years as it rotates around the system.
Andy always gives us the been there, done that, have all the t-shirts kind of feedback. Okay. Angard, did I get it right? I'm so sorry. I just saw Andy's
no problem. Not a problem. It's Anne Harrod.
Anne Harrod.
Hiya, I'm a she, hers. And I'm from Suffolk County Council, lead on data and intelligence side of things. Will demand responsive transport save us? It hasn't yet, but I'm still optimistic.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Dan Saunders, you're the next one up.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Dan Saunders from Basemap. I'm a he, him. Demand responsive transport. Will it save us? If you've got bottomless pit of money, then yes, it will.
And we all know that local authorities have bottomless pits of money.
Exactly right.
Denise Thompson, you're the next one up.
Hi there, I'm Denise.
Denise, we're really struggling to hear you.
Oh, I think it's my... Can you hear me?
That's much better, thank you.
It's okay. At the beginning, I was having a headphone issue, so apologies for that. Yeah, from Transport for West Midlands, all demand transport savers. I think, as I'm going to say, it has its place, probably, maybe, depends where you are, what you're trying to do with it. That's what I'll say.
And Denise, I'm so sorry, with the audio issues, we didn't catch your pronoun there.
Prefer not to say.
Okay, no problems whatsoever. I will use Denise if I need to refer to you. Di Wright, you're the next one up.
Hi, I'm Di Wright from Connect Tees Valley. I deal with all things NaPTAN and bus and roadside publicity. I'm a she, her, and will demand responsive transport savers, not unless we've all got one each, which is the ultimate demand responsive, isn't it?
Doesn't that turn it into private car?
Yeah.
Yeah. Elise, you're the next one up. Elise Northfield.
Hi, I'm Elise Northfield. I am the Senior Public Transport Officer for North Northamptonshire Council. I go by she, her, and will demand responsive transport savers. No, but it does help.
Nice answer. Also, for those who don't know, Elise is from the newest of the local transport authorities, because they're just about to split from into North and West Northamptonshire local transport, and I'm just figuring out how that happens. So that's giving everyone a heads up that there will be an extra local authority in the list eventually. Gillian, you're the next one up.
Hi, Gillian Watson, she, her, Fife Council. I deal with NaPTAN, roadside, etc. Will DRT save us? I don't know, but we currently have a good system running in Fife at the moment, so we'll just see what the future holds.
Thank you, and we should get you to tell us about Fife at some point, the Fife system at some point in time. Jonathan Bigwood, you're the next one up.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Bigwood. I'm he, him. I work for Central Bedfordshire Council, but also handle data for our neighbours at Bedford and Luton boroughs. We're still part of a travel line region, so the data I generate goes through the national PTI system. Demand responsive, I don't think my local authority has a policy on that, so I couldn't possibly comment. On a purely personal level, it does seem to be an expensive way of carrying less passengers than you ever did before. I'm aware there's been a few successes, but
Lynn Anderton, you're the next one up.
Hello, I'm Lynn Anderton. I'm from Transport for West Midlands, she, her, and like several others have said, yeah, I think it has its place in certain areas, but yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Thank you so much. Paul Clark, you're the next one up.
Hello, yeah, I'm he, him. I'm a software developer at Esoterics, a small software company providing some back-end services for TOCs. DRT, I'm sure my colleagues would have some very strong opinions on it, because we've worked with that before. I don't know.
I'm loving that this question puts everyone on the spot and everyone has to find a way of dealing with it. Richard Hall, you're the next one up.
Hello, yes, Richard Hall. I work for ITO, and ITO, the information supplying consultancy, I suppose. I used to be previously responsible for NaPTAN maintenance and recording in Northumberland. My initials, initials, he and him, although just to confuse everyone, I'm noticing my identity on the mural is visiting ladybug, just to confuse everyone. Demand responsive transport, I think the administrative costs can be quite high. I think rural bus services need the support of visitors to the area where they're running, as well as local residents, and I think demand responsive transport is not particularly good with visitors to an area who may not know the way around.
Thank you. That's a really good point. Simon Harris, you're the next one up. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember where I am on the list.
I'm Simon Harris. I'm a he, him, work for Blackpool Transport. Demand responsive transport is just a very expensive taxi service.
I appreciate that thought. By the way, can you chat with me afterwards. I need to talk tram stops very quickly with you. Tansy Appleby, you're the next one up.
Hi, I'm Tansy Appleby. I'm the journey manager at Transport for Wales. I use she, her, and DRT. We have a good DRT system in Wales called Flexi. It is expanding. It's doing quite well, but I think it's a part of the puzzle, but is not the only part. I think normal bus services are extremely important as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And Tim, you're the last one.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim Rivet. I'm he, him. I run ARTIG and support the Department of Transport with data standards. DRT, there's some that are more successful than others, so I think it entirely depends on the transport market in the area that you're introducing it. So it's not a simple picture.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So what we're going to do, just super quick running through the plan for today, we're going to run through the housekeeping pieces, go through previously on just to make sure everybody's aligned. One of the things that we're looking at doing is taking the previously on information and finding a way to publish it up on the NaPTAN site. We're starting to put in a little CMS just to give you a heads up of stuff that's coming in. Then the focus of today is going to be on data quality. We're going to talk about what that means for you, what consistency, completeness and accuracy might mean. And if we get a chance, we'll touch on metadata, but I think it's going to be its own meeting. And then there's feedback corner. So super quickly, there's a YouTube channel where you get to watch all of these because I record them and I do put them up. You can follow us on Eventbrite, which most of you do anyway, and you can sign up for our newsletter, which I believe most of you are on anyway as well. The next meetings, we're going to give a wrap up on accessibility. That's only in a couple of weeks' time because I discovered there was this thing called Easter that messed up my plans. Yes, you'd think I'd be able to read a calendar, but apparently I can't. So I had to move some dates. April, we're not quite sure what we're going to talk about in April, May and June, but we've put some dates in the diary. And by next time, I'll have it planned all the way out till the next January. So previously on NaPTAN, we have a managed removal stop service that's now available, which means we can remove stops from NaPTAN in a controlled process. Andy and Tansy were both some of our beta users. Wahoo, that was easy, is a quote. And also, yeah, Andy managed to get rid of 2,500 stops in one go really quickly the other day. It took less than 10 minutes to run through and process everything. There's a lot of still work that you will need to do, and we know that we're having to hand crank it for everybody because it's dependent on the systems you're using. I know anyone who's on Trapeze, we're working with Trapeze, and anyone who's on Omnibus, we're starting to work with Omni on making sure that they can allow you to take stops out of your system. Once you can take stops out, you can come on to managed removal because it's a one-way move. There's still discussions on street versus schema, which is kind of building into this data quality piece because it's about how do we represent what's on the street in the schema in ways, because we have 148 data dialects going on out there. You've all interpreted the schema and the guidance in particular ways, and I can tell sometimes, not even by looking at the ATCO code, by looking at the common name and a couple of other pieces of information, which local authority something has come from, because of the different, just tiny little differences you've got, and it's thinking about how we combine some of those. Precisely and accurately, we're actually doing quite a bit of work on this at the moment, because we know that the eastings northings are at the correct precision to a metre by a metre. You're doing good work. That's amazing. We know that some bus stops are not located in the eastings northings where they should be, but we also know sometimes the translations of those eastings northings into latitude longitude is putting the bus stop not quite where it should be as well. So we're trying to differentiate between those two right now. The best tool that you can use is the Ordnance Survey tool to do that conversion, because if we can get everyone doing the conversion using the same thing, we're all going to align. And we've got a little bit on that further on. Coaches, a coach is a coach. It's not a bus. But one of the big things is that coach references and the 900 coach stops are now deprecated. Nobody is using them as far as we can tell. And so you don't need to put them in. So when you're in editing a stop and it's got a 900 coach reference, you can quite happily take that out and slowly clean up the data. If you wish to keep them, that's fine. We're going to come to you with some kind of roadmap. We're just working on one now for how we do that. I know that you want a solution. We are still waiting to figure out from DFT what the mapping service will be that they use across the department, and whether it will allow us to show both the easting, northings and latitude, longitude on the same visualization, because that's really going to help people see where their stop is under both coordinates and make the right decisions about how things look. And we're saying that because Ordnance Survey actually published a really interesting paper about the translation problems and showed their office, which sits in 3 different places when you translate the eastings, northings into latitude, longitude using 3 of the different algorithms, and it essentially walks it around the building. So it was really, really fascinating, but that also means that we need to have a look at what we do and how we stay aligned as possible, so that Google only has one problem to solve, or anyone who's using latitude, longitude might have one set and knows how stuff is coming across. There's not 148 different ways. I did some analysis on how we create ATCO codes and NaPTAN codes. You all do it differently, and in fact, some of you, I can tell that there was 2 ways of doing it, because halfway through your numbers change. If you're picking up a local authority or you want some more, I've been able to build some spreadsheets for people up in Scotland, trying to show how they converted their ATCO codes into NaPTAN codes for them, and was able to generate a whole pile of new numbers that matched the right patterns for them and kept to the patterns that they were using. That's something that we can do centrally if you're not able to do it locally. Data retention. You know, that whole thing that we did around how we store data, we're now storing the year snapshot data. We've set it up to store for 100 years. So in 2108, the 2008 data will be deleted. So we know that data is going to sit there for a very long time, nice and stably. But what we did in the way that we deployed it, we saved 97% of our monthly storage costs. So we have done this in the most cost-effective way that we could plan out, so that it's effectively costing only a couple of pence per year to store the NaPTAN data for those 100 years. So we're trying to do it as effectively as possible. Also, when we had to locate a last good version of a local authority when there was a problem, we were able to find it and get to it within 10 minutes, because everything's now beautifully organized. So if you need to drop back to a last known good, if there's a problem, just let us know and we can find it and upload that within minutes, which means that there's a lot more resilience in the system. So very quickly, we're going to do a very quick, and I know that I'm telling you how to suck eggs, many of you, but I just want to run through so that we're all on the same page of what NaPTAN is and how it fits into the ecosystem, because the handoffs are where the data quality points are, and I want to make sure that we're all aware of those handoffs. So this is Beryl. Beryl lives in Bristol. Beryl is traveling to see her friend Beverly. Beverly lives in Birmingham. Using NaPTAN, using a travel planner, Beryl is able to do a multimodal, multi-operator, multi-local authority journey between Bristol and Birmingham. She's able to cross all of those different logic boundaries and silo boundaries. And that's NaPTAN is that kind of core data of what is where that allows all of those silos of information to be joined up. How does this work? Across the public transport system for buses, you have a local authority, you've got your proposed planning and provision stage, at some point in time during one of these 3 stages, and that varies across all of you, you will create a data version of that bus stop in your local NaPTAN data. You'll then put it up into the national, we then combine it into the national data set. That's then pushed up to our data consumers. One of the biggest data consumers is the bus operators, who take in either the local authority or a couple of local authorities or the national set, and they use that within their system to set their routes, to plan how many buses they need to service those routes, and plan how they're going to staff those buses. So there's a big planning stage that sets up the schedules. Those schedules are then published using TNDS and BODs, which are then also pushed up to the data consumers. We know that TNDS and BODs have slightly different views of the data. TNDS is a little bit more passenger focused, BODs is a little bit more analysis focused in the data and how it's presented out. The information from the bus operators and their schedules then goes to the on the bus systems, which gives you the next stop, your ticketing and your fare zones. Those all feed in, as well as your disruption feeds up to your data consumers. And then finally, you've got your real-time bus information with that adherence to schedule, or where we are in the schedule, your management of incidents and where is the bus in comparison to the bus stop, and that builds your real-time information screens, which all feeds up to your data consumers, your data customers, who then push that up to the consumer apps that Beryl can then use to catch the right bus in the right place at the right time for the right fare. The right fare has kind of disappeared slightly, and I'll fix that up later. And NaPTAN's the underpin that enabled this to happen. Everyone should know that. Hopefully that was a very much a egg suckage kind of moment for everybody. Just to also quickly let you know, because it differed from the previous NaPTAN, the new NaPTAN doesn't do any data transformation or change the data as you give it to us. So if you give us the data, the one thing that we do is we take out the notes field because it contains some PII information. And every time that I have it show, I end up having to have a security response of why was this information shown, despite the fact that it's been around since 2000 and whatever. So we are now ensuring that that's completely stripped out. And so your data comes in, we strip that out and we put it into a published doodad. The published doodad does the local version, and then it goes into a combination doodad and gets combined into the national data set, which then gets published. And we end up with 4 files for NaPTAN, your local LA as a CSV and an XML, and the national as a CSV and an XML. And then MPTG, you email DFT support. We sit on it for several months because I am too busy and I don't have time to edit MPTG, but eventually it gets edited. It then gets uploaded against the schema, and it's then published using a little publishing doodad. And those 6 files are what the data consumers use to create your consumer apps, your analysis apps, and the ecosystem apps, which are all the applications that you use. Right. Now I'm going to get you to do some work and not me. So, data quality, that at a stop, or what is where. What I'd like you to do, I'm going to stop talking for a minute and give you 3 minutes to write down the what, as in type of stops, and names. What does data quality mean for you when you think about the type of stops and names? So the type of stops can be marked, unmarked. Is it a BCT? Is it a BCS? All of those different things around the type of stop. Give me a sense of what you think is data quality when you think about the type of stop, and what you think is data quality when you think about name. Do name second, do type of stop first. I'll give you 3 minutes and then we'll come back and play some more. Oh, are there any questions before we barrel on, or is everybody on the same page and thinking of the same things? Cool. So I just went and double checked. I know you saw me faffing around slightly in the screen there. One of the things that came up last in the other meeting on this was what is a marked stop? And I think that's actually a really fascinating question to tackle in terms of type of stop. So if you'd like, I can give you another couple of minutes to talk about what makes a marked stop a marked stop. How marked is a marked? Is it the first mark? Is it a timetable against a wall? Is it a bus cage on the floor? Is it having a pole and a flag? What makes a stop marked from unmarked? And I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to tackle that question as well, if you don't mind. And then I'll talk through the stickies that are up. So we've just got about under half a minute left, so we'll finish those off and then I'll read through them and I'll add any notes to it. That was that lovely sound of being on an airplane, the bing bong that they use. So I'm going to read through the stickies, and if there's any questions or any clarifications that you feel that sticky needs, scream out, throw your hand up, whatever. As a prospective passenger, the type of stop is irrelevant. As a data owner, the type of stop may also be irrelevant. More important would be the facilities, real-time information, shelter, etc. However, for both, would need to know whether it's a bus stop, train stop, airport, or ferry. Interesting point. In NaPTAN, a stop is marked BCT. That doesn't tell the passenger very much, whether there's shelter, seat, etc. Most systems don't show passenger if it's a marked or custom stopped. So it's hard for me to know what I should expect when I look at a bus stop because the systems aren't telling me what I should physically expect. Need to distinguish bus stops, station platforms, ferry landings, also whether or not the stop is a timing point or an intermediate or non-timing point. I wish to ask a question about timing points. I'll put that to one side and I'll come back to that. Remind me to ask my timing points question. The type of stop is relevant to me as a passenger, so I know what to expect on the ground, i.e. a flag or nothing at all. Stops may be marked with a pole, flag, shelter, etc., or custom and practice in rural areas and some residential areas. Interested to know if it is a train, tram, etc., also if bus is on the road or off the road like a bay. And I need to ask what is off the road and what you mean by a bay. BCT, etc., is only for consumers more interested about stop facilities, real-time information, displays covered, etc. People not tech savvy may need clear, concise physical info at a stop. So is it a bus stop? Have they consistent features across the piece? I don't think there's much consistency about what a bus stop looks like. What is interesting is what should a bus stop look like? Is the picture here everything that should be at a bus stop, or is that the idealized, you've got all the money of TfL kind of vision of a bus stop, where some of us would like to be? Marked means some kind of infrastructure that is solely for the purpose of marking a bus stop, i.e. a flag on a lighting column isn't marked. Oh, interesting. Dive into that definition of marked. Oh, no, it isn't. We'll start there in a moment. I'm putting the ones I want to tackle just off on the right-hand side there. Marked means there is a marking on the road to show it as a bus stop. Things like request stops are generally not marked. That's another interesting one about marked. A marked stop has a physical presence on the ground. Anything that indicates there is a bus stop makes it a marked stop. Flexible service stopping points where they stop consistently at a point such as a church doesn't always have marking other than online information. A custom or unmarked stop has nothing physical on the ground. Right, let's leave those alone. Anything that is known to demarcate the stop sometimes can be a local convention unknown to a visitor, flag, a post, or just a shelter of some sort. Some counties just use coloured tape around the streetlights. I will ask that in a moment. Anything that distinguishes a location being where a bus, train, ferry, etc. will stop. As little as a bus cage on the road to the full shelter plus RT plus RTI plus seats plus plate, etc. Anything that shows stops present in flag case, road markings, etc. but more than a worn piece of grass verge. Right. So I'm going to dive into 3 of those little questions. So the timing points. Yes. So what I'm trying to understand, and this is an interesting conversation, is a stop. A stop in NaPTAN can be a timing point, but also a stop can be a timing point in your TransExchange schedule. And there are some stops which are primary timing points for some services and secondary timing points for others because it's dependent on the schedule. So should the timing points live in NaPTAN or TransExchange? That was a long-winded way of saying, is the timing point dependent on schedule or is it dependent on stop?
Schedule.
Richard, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. It was me that put that comment in. I'm aware that NaPTAN, the NaPTAN database has a field which indicates whether or not the stop is a timing point, but I know that bus operators are free to change that if they want to for their own purposes. So, for example, as you say, a bus stop might be a timing point on a local route and a non-timing point on maybe a longer limited stop type route. So there is some flexibility there. It's just that NaPTAN provides a kind of default value to put into that field.
Interesting. That's a field that I would like to ask more questions of, but I'm not going to focus on it today. Jonathan.
Yeah, I would just add to that, and I'm sure at one time in the past I had an area where one operator on a road used this stop as their timing point, another operator used the next stop down as their timing point. So from my perspective, having the timing point field in NaPTAN, I was never quite sure what purpose it served.
Thank you. Andy.
I think you just read my note. The timing point status is nothing to do with the actual stop on the ground, because the stop could be dug up. You know, if a stop gets dug up, the timing point on the service is still there, and it will just move to the one or the other stops either side of it. So it's not to do with the stop status, it's to do with the service or timetable status. It's an attribute of the service, not the stop.
Fantastic. That's really good. Dan.
Yeah, so we always use the time and spot status from the TransExchange data. The only interesting thing that leads on to the point in the moment that I raised is sometimes at a timing point a bus has to wait there. So if it gets there early, it has to wait at that location or go to the next one. So generally a timing point in data will be a bus lay-by or something like where that bus can safely wait and not cause congestion. Now that's the stuff that's interesting to have in the NaPTAN. So when you're planning a route, is the bus going to be on the road causing congestion, or is it going to be off the road so traffic can flow freely past it?
Right, excellent, because that leads me to what is a bay, because London doing London, London's all the because of COVID, and I think it was about footpaths widths. A lot of the bus bays have now been inverted, so they're bus islands, not bus bays. But so just making sure that I've got it right. A bus bay is that kind of in-cut thing that allows a bus to pull in so cars can go past and the bus can sit there and take people on and then pull back out onto the road. Is that what a bus bay is? Or is there something bigger than that?
It can be. Sorry.
Oh.
Right. I would have said a bus is a lay-by is what is at the side of the road that the bus pulls into, picks up and moves off. A bus bay is what you have at a bus station or a coach station, demarked for that particular set of services.
So at a bus bay, I'm kind of pulling completely off the road. I'm not just doing that kind of squeeze in, shuffle, squeeze out, shuffle.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's how I would consider it.
Does everyone else consider it the same? And Richard, it's your chance now.
Oh, I was just going to say that I know bus stations where the departure stands referred to as bays, but that's just a matter of local preference, I guess. I don't think the definition of a bay is kind of universal. It can mean different things in different places.
Andy.
Yeah, the bay in the bus station, some people call it, I've got several local authorities that call it bay, some call it stand, some call it stance, some call it lots of other things. A bay to me would be where, like you say, where you can park the bus off the main road so vehicles can go past. The trouble with that, I believe a lot of highways are doing away with those because a lot of the cars, or most cars, won't let the bus back out onto the road. So that's why they're stopping in the main road.
That I think is some of what they solve. Well, some of what I've seen people doing. So for clarification from me, a lay-by is the kind of half pull-in, that kind of bus width indentation in the street to allow a bus to pull in and then pull out again. That's a lay-by, and a bay is something where the bus maybe travels slightly further off the road. Oh, cool. Somebody's put in a picture of a bus bay, although that looks like from the I was going to say the 1970s, but possibly even earlier than that picture.
Yes, it's from the official DFT guidance, and it dates from 1997.
Tim, can I null point you for referring to a schema?
Go on then. I'll be Alan on the silly game show where you get klaxons, and he designs to lose.
Yes. QI, that's the one. Yes. So that is what I was referring to as a lay-by, or Di was referring to as a lay-by, which is that indentation piece, which is slightly different maybe to somewhere where a bus is directed completely off the road into a side, not so much a side street, a side off-road place to sit and wait for a considerable period of time, maybe on a turnaround or something like that. Is that the difference? So a bus on a turnaround might not sit in one of these. Or am I confounding everything with an extra added value? So we've done timing points, we've done bus bays, sort of. Marked. How marked is marked? Is it the moment that there is a mark that I'm considered marked, or is there a certain amount of markedness that I have to be considered marked? So do I need a cage and a pole, or just a cage, or just a pole, or a cage, a pole, or is a pole and a shelter but no cage enough? What is marked?
Anything.
So Andy's on the anything.
Any single item or multiples of items will make it marked. If it has nothing on the ground whatsoever, it is unmarked and custom.
Excellent. Di.
Agreed. 100%.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Excellent. So it's one of those. Jonathan.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with Andy. The message we got when we started doing this was, if there is anything there at all, even if it's just a very scruffy bus stop flag attached to a convenient tree or lamp post, that makes it a marked stop. It's only a custom stop if there is absolutely nothing visible there that gives any indication it's a bus stop.
So you three have all been around since time immemorial and the beginning of NaPTAN. Is there anyone who's newer to NaPTAN who can give me a sense of where they considered how marked is marked?
So in Northants, bearing in mind I've only been doing buses for just turned 12 months tomorrow. So for me, a marked bus stop is anything that has any form of infrastructure or paint that indicates to the member of public that a bus will stop there if they put their hand out, or if they indicate that they want the bus to stop. If there's nothing there, the general public do not and will not know that they can catch a bus there, and therefore it is unmarked, and therefore it shouldn't be a bus stop. Because unless the general public know that you can catch a bus, there is no point in having it.
That makes tons of sense.
Regardless of whether it's a custom stop or not, if you do not display that you can catch a bus, then it is not a bus stop.
I like that, because one of our first things on these calls was, what is a bus stop? We spent many hours and we ended up a bus stop is where the bus stops, which took us many hours to distinguish. So at least banging. Tansy. Oh, you've jumped back onto mute.
Sorry, my computer is very slow today. Yeah, so I had a question about this, because I know of an example in Wales where we have a stretch of verge which is grassy, and then there's a tiny little section which has been tarmacked, and that's it. And that is the bus stop. So would that count as unmarked? Because there's no flag there. There's nothing to indicate that the bus stops there. But apart from that tiny little bit of pavement, just playing devil's advocate here.
Oh, I'm sure I can find that bus stop, and I will add it to my list of dreadfuls and edge cases. Is it marked? I don't know. I'm not the person.
I
would agree that it isn't, but I'm asking the question.
I wouldn't say so. A piece of tarmac on the road could indicate that it's a safe place to cross the road, or a common place to cross the road. It doesn't indicate that a bus will stop there.
So the custom and practice bus stops are, just to ask, and not playing devil's advocate, because I kind of hate that idea. In many ways, it's a lot of the ones that I know, the custom bus stop is opposite a marked stop. So it's marked, and one half of the pair is marked, and the other one is just a custom. Is that how you're using customs, or are customs just ye patchy of grass that some people may know and visitors will not? Di, you can help me out.
Certainly up here we could have an invisible stop on both sides of the road for a stop pair, so it's not always opposite an existing infrastructure.
Asking you about your invisible stops, do we trying to phrase this right, how does a visitor know that the invisible stop is a stop?
They probably don't. but the local
Right.
people do.
Okay. I just had a question and just thought I would ask it out loud. Andy, I see your hands up, down, and up again.
Yeah, I was going to say I totally agree with Di. A lot of our stops, if it's built up areas, they'll have a flag on one side and a custom on the other. But some customs could be a pair of custom stops outside by a farm, and they always go and pick up Farmer John, and they drop them off at the same place. And John or Farmer John knows it's the bus stop, and no one else would go there. So there's no reason for a visitor to ever know that, that Farmer John needs to go to the market in the bus.
No, I totally understand. We may have many theoretical visitors, but it's still one of those things of just trying to allow for people to understand. So that's given us some food for thought on marked and unmarked and data quality. So you spent a few minutes on names. Shall I give you another couple of? Actually, I'll talk through these and then we can just discuss it amongst ourselves. Names are generally outdated, opposite a police station or a pub that shut down 20 years ago. Oh yeah, I just heard about a bus stop that was named after something that was destroyed in the 1940s. Name needs to allow a stop to be distinguished from the next stop down the street. 3 essential elements of the name: locality, common name, and indicator. Locality name identifier. NaPTAN rule not to include street name can be unhelpful to passengers, and some names don't reflect what locals/regulars call it. The name is one of the most important data items on a bus stop. It must be descriptive enough for a visitor to find the stop and the local alike. A good stop name should allow prospective passengers to know they're in the right place to catch a bus. So, is there any other thoughts on names and naming conventions? Because I know that there was a ton of rules that still float around a little bit. Andy?
Going on the outdated thing, Sevenoaks is still called Sevenoaks, even though there's not Sevenoaks. But everyone knows it is Sevenoaks, and it did have Sevenoaks once upon a time, but it doesn't anymore. Yeah, should we rename every stop just because a landmark that has been there for years is now been called something different? The locals will still know it as that landmark. We have bus stop that's named pub names, that the pub has changed name or the pub's no longer a pub, but the name is still that because that's what all the locals have always called it and all the operators have always called it, and they will call it that.
Great point. And I want to ask a question. When you say Sevenoaks, are you referring to Sevenoaks as in a stop that's called Sevenoaks, or Sevenoaks as in the suburb area, town thingy of outside London, thingy outside London called Sevenoaks that one of my friends live at, and I was really struggling to figure out whether it was part of London or not. It's got a train station. That's all that I know.
It's on the way to Brands Hatch, I believe.
I love the way that you think I have any idea of where Brands Hatch is. I don't even know where Sevenoaks is. Right. The example that I was going to bring up was the stop in Hackney called the Star Cinema, where a person in a previous call brought up that they kept on looking for the Star Cinema, only to find out that the Star Cinema was destroyed in the 1940s. And while the stop was still called the Star Cinema itself had not existed for quite a large number of years. And the stop could be named something that was a little bit more clear as to where it was. However, it's a stop in the middle of Hackney, so even the side roads don't make a lot of sense. That's just a question about that. Denise, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I think names is one of the things that I think would be really good to kind of have an update and fresh view on in terms of NaPTAN. I think the key thing that it needs to be not confusing for people, whatever that might mean, which could mean lots of different things. Also need to think about not just when you're waiting for the bus or you're trying to get to a bus stop, but actually when you're on board a vehicle and need to know where you're getting off. So I know a lot of the work Lynn's done with one of our bus operators is around when you're on the vehicle, if you're you're on the road that then the bus turns off and the stop is the name of that road you're on at the moment. It can be quite confusing to be told the next stop is, you know, High Street if you're already on High Street, because it's called High Street because that's the side road. I'm not explaining that very well, but hopefully it makes sense. So I think it's about trying to, I think it's really hard, as much as it shouldn't be, but I think it's about taking your time, working it through and trying to view it from as many angles, not all, but as many angles of the customer journey as you can, to just check that it makes, as I say, it's not confusing and it does make sense. I think the duplication issue we've struggled with as well, in terms of not being able to have the same name in the same locality. Now, I get the reason for it, but if you've got a really long road and literally in almost perhaps there's a loop of another road that comes at one end of it and then the other end of it, you know, getting sometimes coming up with different names it can be really tricky. So yeah, I think it's just for us something I think a refreshed perspective on would be really helpful.
Yes, that's something that we're trying to maybe think about in the future. So I see Elise, you put your hand down. I see some thumbs up. So Denise, that was a really great point. Let's move on to Di, and then back to Elise if Elise still wants to put their hand up.
Hi, just to say that's exactly what I was going to say, that unique names are incredibly difficult to come up with sometimes. But also, if the name is written on the bus stop plate, your Star Cinema, if the bus stop plate was there and had a name written on it, would that not have been a bit of a giveaway for the person? But unfortunately, not everybody does around the country write the names on the bus stop plates. And yes, there are issues inherent in doing so, because if they're out of date, who's going to change it?
Sorry, and I was just the person who was telling this tale is completely blind.
Oh,
so
right,
it was kind of one of those. It was kind of one of those moments that, that created extra things. Just before I throw to Jonathan, I will tell you that locality and name need to link together, because post office is the most common name of a bus stop across the entirety of NaPTAN, because we went and did that as part of a little test for the team, and it's post office and then it's something else and then it's High Street. I think post office, I can't remember what the middle one is, and then the next one is High Street. So knowing which post office and which High Street is really important. That's where the locality name comes in, and that link off to NaPTIG and NPTG and that gazetteer piece, it allows some of that differentiation, which is fascinating. Jonathan.
I was going to say I can see both sides of this, where there's an obsolete pub name. Yes, the regulars know that this stop in Slough is the George on Farnham Road that closed down 10 years ago. Anyone who's new to the area or visitors the area, they will see a supermarket there instead. Some NaPTAN software does allow you to put one or more alternate names in, so that at least from the journey planner, you can search on whatever you call it. But yeah, the name that comes up on sort of third-party map applications has got to be the headline name. But I think one of the difficulties is that I think the idea when NaPTAN started was that local authorities would set the names for bus stops. Bus operators would then use those names. Bus operators are going to do what they like in their own publicity. Again, I better not say where, but one bus stop I had in a town centre where the same operator called the same stop two different things, depending on which of two former operators that had merged together had originally run that service. So the timetable for this route, we called it one thing, the timetable for another route, we called exactly the same stop, something else, which could be a bit confusing.
That's a unique situation. So thank you for that, Jonathan. Dan, your thoughts?
Yes, we do quite a bit with American data and American cities, and obviously they're great. They've got grid systems, so all of their stops are 63rd and 1st, 63rd and 2nd, and things like that. So you actually tell where the junction is, and actually it's quite useful for navigating using that. I'm not sure if that's something we can try and adopt in some way. I know that the point's been raised, you've got looping roads and things like that make a lot of sense. But for navigation purposes, as a passenger, it makes quite sense if you're going to be at the junction of 63rd and 1st Street or something like that. I'm not sure that's something we can try and incorporate more of or not, because you can tie it to a map a bit easier.
That's a fascinating perspective as well. Wellington is an example of a grid system that was put down on top of a geography that was not exactly mutable with the grid system, and there are actually some vertical streets. And Wellington in New Zealand tried to put a grid system across basically an area of great hillage, and it creates some of the craziest roads possible. But also a grid system in London. London is a medieval walking city that's now got roads on it. And I think that's a lot of our city centres, apart from the very, very new ones, are all these kind of very mangled turny streets. And even out in the suburbs, we've gone from grids into a lot of loops and cul-de-sacs and areas like that. So I'm not sure that a grid system would entirely work, but I know that one of the things NaPTAN tries to do is get a name close to intersections and things like that. That sometimes leads to weird things like Dunton Road in London, which is Old Kent Road Tesco's. Everyone knows it as Old Kent Road Tesco's. Even half the buses that go past there call it Old Kent Road Tesco's. But not quite closest, but the first road that bus stop is by is Dunton Road, and you get very, very different routing options depending on whether you go to Old Kent Road Tesco's or Dunton Road, because of stop names and weirdness. Just going to put that one out there, that I know that this is weird, and I know that names, especially when there's 2 or 3 stops nearby, it can be really hard to distinguish between them as well. So moving on, let's move on to the where. So this part of the where is kind of looking at where a bus stop is located relative to the road based on 3 mapping solutions. From memory, this is Apple, this is Google, and this is OpenStreetMap. Yes, that's right. I remembered them around the right way. And I've mapped the same 4 stops, the same 2 pairs on each, and just tried to give a view. So we've got a Hockeridge Wood that's kind of relatively close to the road, although it's slightly in the wrong. In this one, it's in the right place relative to the side street. In this one, they map on the wrong side of the road and a well out, and are also very out compared to the side street. And in this one, they're on the wrong side of the side street. They're actually the side street. Actually, they should be much further down. On this one, they map in the right place. Kind of, although on the side closest to me, on the side here, they should actually map into the middle of that island by the bus stop. They're actually mapping slightly wrong. This one here, again, is kind of about right, but slightly too far down. And this one here, it's kind of hard to tell, but again, they're slightly on the wrong side of the bicycle pathways there. So what we wanted to have a think of is what is good enough. How close is close enough, given that every single mapping solution throws up its own problems? And what we've got here is we're starting to do some work. Oh, sorry, Andy, I'll stop and answer your question before I barrel on. Andy.
I was going to say, on the mapping systems, we always, when we used to use the Trapeze software, we had OS mapping, and it was very accurate. The trouble with that is, when I got there, the mapping was about 5 years out of date because updates cost so much money. And then the OS brought in so many licenses to go on top of that because it's going on the website and stuff like, that sort of thing. We now use OSM mapping because it's free or relatively cheap. Doesn't cost our local authorities a thing, but the accuracy of the roads are not very good because the road width is dictated by the type of road, not by the actual road on the ground like OS is. So, if people want to spend a lot of money to get the accuracy of NaPTAN better, we could do it by licensing the OS mapping. But other than that, there's not a lot we can do. Our maps are now updated on a weekly basis. I get fresh maps every Saturday and fresh GIS every Saturday. So, any new roads, any new infrastructure goes in, any changes, we've got it immediately.
That's great. And thank you for the information on the Ordnance Survey. That is one of the things that we are having to look at. Dan.
There's another thing on the Ordnance Survey. So they're about to release a new product on the 1st of April called the Multimodal Routing Network. And they're making lots of promises around having locations of bus stops more accurately mapped and provision of where there's sidewalks and width of sidewalks and if they're bus lanes and things like that. They're bringing all that into that data. And again, that's freely available for any public funded organisation or any organisation that's working on behalf of a public funded organisation or a sub-license agreement. So they're doing a lot of work around that at the moment that we're trying to consume ourselves.
Thank you, Dan. I will get somebody at DFT to try and get us in there and make sure that we've got things in the right places. Di.
Yeah, just a slightly sideways one. I've certainly had at least 2 that I recall, possibly 3 stops where the operator has asked me to tweak the location because their system isn't picking it up. So it's coming through as a fault at their end that the buses are leaving the stop early when actually it's not. But if I just tweak the location of the stop slightly, it'll force it to not record that.
Yeah, that's I kind of understand that. So I'm going to quickly jump onto how we're trying to programmatically look at what is good enough and identify some parts of the problem, because we know that you've got an Eastings Northings that you translate to a lat long that you then most people put on a map, although the Eastings Northings, if it's Ordnance Survey, will go on the map, which is more accurate, has less translation issues than if you put a latitude longitude. So what we've done is we created a little Cody Doodad tool that converts the Eastings Northings using the Ordnance Survey into latitude longitude, and then if you've supplied your latitude longitude, it does a difference between the 2 lat longs and creates for a bus stop says this is how distant you are from the calculated latitude longitude. So what we're trying to just pull out there is any local authorities where your difference from the true calculated Ordnance Survey version is wildly variant, whether you've got and this can be anything from you've manually there's a typo, there's something like that, or something's ended up slightly further out than it should be. So what we're showing here is actually a really good one. So this is how many meters different every stop is from its calculated version. So we actually have all of the stops at this local authority. I don't know, I can't say which one because I can't remember which one I used here. And essentially we go from 0.01, so like less a centimetre out, or a centimetre difference between the 2 latitude longitudes, to 1.1 meters different. So as far as we were looking at it and we're going, we actually think this is a pretty reasonable variation. There's no wild variations. These are all rounding differences. And this looks like a really, really good local authority for doing the translations. We do have others where we've got differences of 15, 20 meters on average, and we've got some that are 250 plus meters out. So this is not looking at the bus stop being in the right place, it's looking at that translation from the Eastings Northings to latitude longitude being as close as possible. So one of my questions is this kind of double checking the translation a reasonable thing to do? And if I came to you and said, it looks like your translations are a tiny bit balked or a bit out, would that be useful information for you? Question 1. And question 2, for anyone who's working downstream, does this kind of thing makes sense, and making sure that bus stops are most likely where the bus stop is. Because I know that we can't be 100%. There are some, because we're relying on the eastings, northings. Those are kind of my questions. So Andy's got his hand up, so he's going to come in, but I just kind of wanted to open it up.
Yes. Any feedback about our translation from easting, northing to that long? If we're out at all, at the moment, I have no idea. I think we're spot on, but you looking at it from the outside may say yes, it's you're miles out, because our translation in Cornwall may be totally different from our translation in the High Trans area as well. The further the geo distances gets apart, the distance may widen. So yeah, anything that can help us improve it would be good.
Fantastic. That's really great to hear. What we're doing is looking at how, instead of me kind of thumping through this and doing a couple of drop tests, we can do this a little bit more programmatically and give you this information quite easily and quite quickly, somehow, magically. So that's part of kind of what we can do. So Andy will probably look at this, because I think this is one of yours, Andy. I'm not, but I'm just being prevaricated because I'm not sure which one. I know that you will look at this and go, oh, could I get that? Could I get my top number down to 0.5 rather than 1? And I know that things like this will drive some of you to looking at your data and going, is there a way that I could tweak this and make this, and identify those stops that are, because we can give you the full data, identify those stops that are those outliers, and go and have a look at whether we've got this, whether the stop's in the right place, but also if we have the right translation. Because there's two issues. One is, have you mapped the stop correctly with your eastings, northings? And the other one is have you translated it right? Does anyone else have thoughts on this one? Needs to be close enough to where the bus travels along the road, not stopping. So the AVL systems provide a location close enough for the geofence to identify it as having passed the stop. So this is that where we place the stop, the AVL systems are the primary user, or is it the passengers who need to be the primary user?
Well, an AVL system just, a location system, so it's technology, and they have they will have a variable accuracy as they travel along the road as their GPS signal wanders around. And so when you've got a point, when you've got a bus stop and you go, I'm going to draw a 25 metre circle around it, and if I see a bus appear within that circle, then I'm going to say it's visited the stop, and so I'll trigger off updates to predictions and performance data and things like that. So it needs to be able to get inside that geofence for quite a lot of different systems to record it as visiting a stop.
Is it always 25 metres, Tim?
No, depends on the system. Sometimes it's 50, and sometimes you'll have it at a stop-specific variant. So, for example, in a bus station, you might actually have it smaller than that even, because you've got lots of stops in close proximity.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Because if we locate the bus stop on where somebody needs to stand to catch the bus, that circle around it should include the bus cage or where the bus is stopping, but still allow the passenger, where the passenger needs to stand to get on the bus, clearly indicated as well.
Yeah, 99% of the time that's perfectly fine. It's just the 1% where it's probably the system needs, the IT systems need to change rather than where you put the stop, because that really should be customer focused, and the system ought to adapt to where things are a bit different. But
I'm also laughing.
Not always. That will be why sometimes bus operators ask people to tweak where a bus stop is to make sure it gets into the geofence, or make sure it doesn't, depending on what the problem is.
Yes, and I was just going to say, NaPTAN, or welcome to dealing with the long 1% or less tails that seem to pop up on every single rule. Jonathan.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. There's sort of a bus stop very close to where I live, where I think the original message when we started doing NaPTAN was that the bus stop should be located where the bus stop post is, if there is one, or the bus stop flag is, if there isn't. But this particular stop near to me, which is a timing point, there is no way you can actually get a bus to stop with its front door anywhere near that because of the way the lay-by is constructed. So the bus ends up stopping with its back end close to where the bus stop post is, and passengers just walk a bit forward from the shelter to get on the bus. But I have a suspicion that the AVL will consider that the bus has left the bus stop at the moment it arrives there. So from the operator's point of view, they could be being recorded as an early departure from a timing point, which means the traffic commissioner could shout at them, even though the bus is then maybe sitting there to wait time for a few minutes. Again, it's perhaps the 1%, but you can end up spending a lot of time dealing with the odd 1% situations.
Yeah, and I think with that one, because I know there's a couple of, I think they call them tail stops in London, by moving, and this is one of the reasons why I think the suggestion came in, of moving it from the flag to where the passenger needs to stand, which are normally co-located. They're normally within the same metre by metre square, but where they're not, the focus, the point is where the passenger is standing, not where the bus flag is. And I think that would resolve some of those issues where you've got the leaving early because it's a tail stand or a tail flag stop. So going through, so we've gone through what is good enough. Let's just have a look and see what the next one is. Oh, yes. So thinking about data quality. So we're going to take our brains ever so slightly. What we want to do is we are looking at going through NaPTAN for, I can't believe I'm suggesting this, but we've got data science and data engineers, so we'll figure this out. We're going to go through all the local authorities that have gone into managed removal, because we know you want to get rid of your bad data by getting rid of the stops. And we're going to look at the consistency, completeness, and accuracy of the different key fields in NaPTAN. And the key fields are things like your stop name, your location, your stop type. It's kind of just doing our indicator is one of the other really key ones. So we want to look at what is consistent, what is complete, what is accurate for those fields, and then give you some feedback so that we can start to work together to go what this means. To do that, I need to understand what you see as consistency, completeness, and accuracy. So grab some stickies, throw it up there, and tell me what consistency means for you when you're thinking about a field within NaPTAN. Maybe, and this will make Dan and everyone who uses indicator as a consumer happy, maybe thinking of indicator as one of those fields when you think about it. What does consistency mean to you? I just need to take a second and figure out what went beep in the background. Just bear with me here for 2 seconds.
Jay, if you're talking to us, you're on mute.
You let me get that far through that and then told me? I can't believe Elise was the first one to speak up. Right, so where did I start off? I read a pile of those and you didn't tell me. Right. I read through all of those, in fact, and you didn't tell me. So the level of data that has been input is the same regardless of the local authority, and you shouldn't be able to tell which LA created it. Something unambiguous that we all use in the same way. I'm laughing slightly because I know that you can't, nobody creates their ATCO codes in the same way, and I'm not about to change ATCO codes. Taking the same approach to naming each stop, e.g. side road, is first preference for common name with us. Trying to keep the maximum length of a stop name to support customer information so that using the same abbreviation for the same place if required. I like. Need to balance consistent approach with being able to deal with local circumstances, e.g. where there just isn't a side road. I was rabbiting on about that. Correct use of the key fields, e.g. not including the indicator as part of the common name. Rules are followed so that the data looks the same. Data quality as in technically correct or correct at a street passenger level. Ideal is both. That is my ideal, is that we have something that is readable for the passenger so that they know where they are, they know where they're catching a bus, they know what the bus stop is called, with obviously focusing on name here, but it's also, I know that there's consistent approaches, and one of the things, and one of the reasons why I said it's about the field within a local authority, it's ensuring that you're internally consistent in the way that you're approaching it. That there's no, because I know as people, many of you have not changed personnel doing this for quite some time, but the ones where there has been, it's just making sure that there has been a consistency maintained. We don't have that divergent off into what I call data dialects. We've got slightly different ways of writing very, very similar things. For those who think London's got it all right, I took, in the previous meeting, I took TfL through where they've been inconsistent in their naming around King's Cross St Pancras. Sometimes the stop is called King's Cross Underground. The next stop, the stop besides it is called King's Cross St Pancras. The stop besides it again is called King's Cross, and the stop just down from it is called St Pancras. But they're all within the same. They're all within the same bus bay. They're all within the same pull-in. They've all just been given incredibly different names. So it's kind of like that that internal consistency is also important to maintain. Does that make sense? So starting off with internal consistency, and then once we've got a little bit, we're looking at internal consistency, then looking at that kind of wider view of consistency. And I know that we're talking names, but also talking things like indicator. If you're doing W space dash space bound, all lowercase, it's slightly different to capital W space dash space capital B bound, and just highlighting where you've got a slightly different consistency going on. Andy?
There's a DFT document, or there was a DFT document on the guidance for indicators, which says you shouldn't actually have a space where you were saying W or lowercase w space dash space blah blah blah.
I know.
It should be capital W dash bound all lowercase.
We will do an entire section on indicators when we get to it, Andy. I appreciate that, and I know you shouldn't, but I know this is one of the reasons around consistency, is just being able to spot these, because it happens because people type, or a drop down's been typed in wrong, or something's happened. So identifying it. Tell me about it. This is the I can't remember who it is who pointed out there's 12,000 different variations in indicator, and there should be around about, it's only a couple of hundred should be the maximum. Because
not necessarily, because the indicator is a free text field, so you could put outside number 6.
Absolutely. It's how you do outside, and there's a lot of stuff that could be compressed down that isn't, and I mean in terms of the W bounds, etc. Just right. Anyway, taking me down that rabbit hole. We'll be there forever. So that's consistency. Accuracy. Now, consistency and accuracy might seem the same, but what does accuracy mean to use when you're thinking about your data? What does accuracy mean? And not just in terms of location accuracy down to X number of meters, etc. What does accuracy mean when you give me a name, a locality, an indicator, a bearing, all of those things? What does accurate mean inside your head? Because I know that you all have ever so slightly different thinkings on this, and I'm just trying to tease those out just so that we can see those slight differences. And I know you've got slight differences because I can read the data dialects within the data set, which makes me sound like some kind of crazy Zen master with this data set, and I'm not quite there yet, but it feels like it at times. Spelling is correct. Don't get me onto apostrophes. We're going to touch apostrophes, aren't we? And I am aware that accuracy is less easy to audit in a lot of ways. It's also possible to look at data and go, is this the sort of data that we expect? And we can do with data-y stuff, there is data-y stuff around accuracy that we can do as double checks or side checks or slightly different checks. We're just going to help some of this. I'm liking this one. What is recorded digitally matches what is on the ground. There's a bit of a difficulty in that because we don't want to go and survey the 500,000 or so bus stops within this country, but actually making sure that we know how we're doing that matching is really important. Localities need to be well formed, e.g. the areas and stops they encompass shouldn't overlap. Absolutely, and I know that requires a good localities mapping solution and some good pieces around that, and that's something that I've got in my slightly longer list that we need to sort. But talking through data quality in these formats allows me to kind of build the case for doing that. Getting the correct side of the road and direction, yes, absolutely. Use of the apostrophe matches the generally accepted inclusion. Spelling is correct. Consistency can be tested by a data audit. Accuracy cannot always be tested by a data audit. Localities are more difficult to pin down in urban areas. Council wards postcode has a clear boundary, but where people think they live is subjective. Absolutely. I think we got into a discussion around what the locality names are for some spaces. Need to match on the ground. This should go without saying. Actually, it needs saying because that's street versus schema is or street versus data is very, very much one of the pieces that the gaps that we're trying to squeeze out. The bearing field can point to inaccuracies if they are filled out. No, if they are correct. Is there anything else around accuracy? Cool. So the next one is completeness. What does completeness mean to you? What does my data is complete? My data is happy. Is it content? Is it complete? Is it if you don't have, if that particular stop doesn't need that piece of data, do you put in a default piece? Do you indicate that it's not applicable? Do you leave it blank where you can? What does completeness mean in that kind of format? And I don't think, what's the time? Okay, I think I can grab that. Just bear with me here a moment. I'm going to grab something and put it in the next piece to talk about metadata. I just need to grab a metadata example. And a good metadata example. Andy, talk to me while I mutter away to myself.
While we're on data accuracy and completeness and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
do you know, is there a roadmap for when we're going to get the ability to edit the NaPTAN data again? A lot of my local authorities have got localities to add or to edit, and I've got a locality checking tool about to be released into Diva. So there'll be a lot of changing we're going to want. It used to be an ITO, but we've created it in Diva, so we can check the quality. Obviously,
yes.
Localities is the first thing you start with.
Yes. I've got some help now. We've got the lovely Alex, who's going to be helping doing the updates to the central stops and to NPTG. So hopefully we'll be able to catch up. One of the things that I've put on the roadmap for the next 12 months, which hasn't yet been approved, so I can't say it's definitely going to happen, is devolving the 940 stops off to local authorities to edit. On top of that would be devolving the NPTG off to local authorities to edit. It's the previous version. How can I describe NPTG? The structure within NPTG doesn't quite match the desired structure within the schema and the schema documentation. There's some missing layers and gaps, and there's a few places where things aren't quite right. So one of the things that we're going to look at with data quality is NaPTAN and looking at how we best clean it up and where we apply our effort best. So one of the things that we want to make sure when we tackle this data quality that we tackle the right place. And so that's one part. This came up because of the I will make a very small mess in NPTG when I split Elisa's ATCO codes out. However, we're taking that slight hit to make the ATCO code split easy, and then we'll go back and clean up NPTG later. Because there is a lot of work to clean up in NaPTAN and just make it a little bit more fit for purpose. We know of localities that aren't quite centered right for traveling to the right place when you put in that locality, and we just want to spend a little bit more time sorting it out. Does that make, I know that doesn't really answer your question, Andy. In the meantime, send through the stuff. I've got Alex. Alex will be making lots of changes because we know NaPTAN needs some tender loving care.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Is that I feel like I've done the ultimate in prevarication there, but it's kind of trying to say I've put some proposals forward. I know this stuff needs to happen. I'm just not 100% sure when or how. But we do have a tactical solution. Right, I have just managed to grab a couple of these and I will throw them up on here. Brilliant. Just give me 2 seconds. I'll throw in metadata and then we will have a quick a quick convo on some of the problems that I'm seeing with metadata, or not seeing, and then some of the stuff that we want to do with it. And that'll set you up for next time, not next time, when we come back to talk about metadata. Just bear with me here 2 seconds. Nothing like building a mural live to have demoitis of your fingers. I want that. I want those last 3. No, those last 2. Looks like the right ones. Bang and bang. Yes, excellent. We shall talk metadata in a moment. Right. Zooming back across. So, talking about completeness. All the stops that exist in NaPTAN and all the fields are accurately populated. Whoa. So completeness is linked to accuracy. Leaving fields blank could mean an element has been missed out. Using na would perhaps be better to show the field has actually been considered. Interesting. Stops that are due to be opened and are referenced by future timetables are in NaPTAN. Okay, so these are the ones that are in planning, and we need to think about how far ahead that is. All relevant fields are entered. We will dive into relevant when we get to this. Each stop should include all the necessary data. We will dive into necessary. All the data necessary for a purpose is provided. We will dive into necessary and purpose. All elements of a station are included, e.g. platforms and national rail stations. I have put in to next year that we will put platforms in, because I can no longer, with good conscience, come to use and talk about data quality when we only have 3 platforms. And that is one of the things that I have sent people off to go and talk to rail, and we are trying to do an audit. However, the audit that we ran meant that Brent Cross West didn't appear, so we need to reconsider what sources we use to audit from. All stops are in our data set and all mandatory fields have data in them. So if I just put dashes in my mandatory fields, is that sufficient? Or do I need to be complete and accurate when I fill out my mandatory fields? Is there any other thoughts on completeness, and did this bring up anything? I know that I'm going to dodge some of this and go and talk about metadata, but I think there's some really interesting points on completeness in there that we will definitely be coming back to. Jonathan.
One of the comments somebody else put up about pairs of stops being grouped together, that can raise an issue with localities where the locality boundary is declared as down the middle of a main road. And then one of the authorities I've done stuff for in the past, they drew the locality boundaries for me. So different sides of the main road were 2 localities. Also, sort of in my present patch, if you look at an aerial photograph, you can't see the join between Luton, which is a unitary authority, and Dunstable, which is in central Bedfordshire. And again, there's a main road where the bus stops on one side of the road are in central Bedfordshire. Bus stops on the other side of the road are in Luton. They, as I've inherited them, have been put into the 2 separate authorities NaPTAN, so you can't pair stops that are in 2 separate data sets. One authority I did in the past, we had a similar situation where the borough boundary ran down the middle of the road, and we sort of agreed quietly between ourselves that we were just going to pretend that this handful of pairs of stops were in one council, this handful of pairs of stops were in the other. But sort of either way you do it, you're breaking one of the NaPTAN rules.
So this is an interesting question around the usefulness of rules. Are there rules that are not useful that are causing us many workarounds, and are there rules that are useful and we publish or we put together some very clear, if you are in this situation, this is how you handle it? Because there are so many boundaries, there are so many different ways of doing boundaries. There are also porous boundaries, there are non-porous boundaries. TFL boundaries is a whole new thing. And for Elise, this is the question that I've been wrestling with as to how I handle your boundaries, because if you have the situation where your stops on either side of the road are within different local authorities, that just creates entire question marks and problems. And yes, we're going to find them and we will resolve them in some way, and we'll come and talk to Jonathan when we come to resolve them. But I just wanted to give people a sense of, like, yeah, boundaries in NaPTAN are really hard. We seem to have done some things around localities, and I know that they were done with good intent. It's just making sure that we understand the intent and how we can massage / break / make that intent work for us, so that we end up with something that is a good way around them. Does that make sense? Because if we're all running into the same problem, but we're breaking the rules in 148 different ways, that actually makes more of a problem for me than if we run into a problem and we break it in one of three different ways. Because then at least I know, okay, so this is the solution for this within the software or within this area. Does that make sense? Because I am trying to figure out how you all have done boundaries at various points. Denise.
Yeah, I think on that point, hopefully this point is relevant, I think localities are really difficult, and I think you're right that they are sometimes helpful, and they're sometimes given as a rule that then makes it, you're doing workarounds or whatever, or even the examples you just said there. I mean, from a customer perspective, I imagine they don't really care. They'd rather, those stops being linked and being effectively in the same place is what they care about. However, other times, so the reason we've had some people say, well, why is the locality not there? So if you're looking at a list of stops on a route that's perhaps quite spread out, so it's going through different small villages or different towns or whatever, you could just end up with high street if you didn't put the locality. So I wonder if there's something where sometimes it's maybe we have to put it in there, but I don't know, that maybe it's not always mandatory, or maybe that it's not the reason, it's not forcing you to do something if it's not really appropriate to that situation. It was almost like an added bit of information rather than a necessary piece. But I'm sure those of you that know things more, although I've been around a long time, I've not been as close to the detail for a while, so there's probably an opposite view.
Thank you. Those are really great points. And yeah, I think this is something to dive into. We're going to be talking data quality for some time while I kind of do some work in the background and bring little bits and pieces. So this was kind of like meeting one of many, but I'll try to break them up with other things so that we don't all just lose our minds over data quality. Richard.
Just to say, I believe there is a field in the NaPTAN database called Cross Street, which is it's maybe not much used, and it's not a mandatory field, but you can use it if you want to. I'm not sure that journey planners know that it's there or know how to make use of it, but it's a useful facility that we can use perhaps.
So one of the issues here, and this broke, I remember this broke somebody's heart. I think it was yours when this came out, was that some people have put remarkable efforts into making Landmark complete and really, really useful, and no journey planner uses it. It's not used by any journey planner. It's not used by anyone downstream. It's one of those pieces of data there. And this is also one of the things of trying to have these discussions in the open with as many contributors as possible from the different parts of the ecosystem, is understanding where if it is going in to put data into a field and that field isn't being picked up downstream. So effectively all of that effort and all of that data is just sitting there not being used, which means that it's wasted effort. And these are the sort of things that we want to look at and go, is this actually really good data? Should we continue to use it and push people to consume it? Or should we just not put this data in and deprecate some of these fields? For example, clear down codes have not been used since I'm going to say 2012, but it was probably before that. So the clear down codes field, we don't need to fill out anymore. So people who've got data in there, they can take it out, or we can remove it from the system. So it's just having a think about all of these data fields and thinking about it that way. Di, was it you who because I know that you've got pretty good landmark data, was it you who discovered that no one was using it? And I saw your face, and it was the most disheartened face that I've ever seen.
No, it wasn't me, I'm afraid.
Oh no! Oh, I've misremembered. Damn. Because I thought I got it so right for once. But it is one of those ones of there are fields that are possible within NaPTAN that are not consumed by the journey planners. So if we do use a field, I think we need to be really clear and advertise to the journey planners that this field is now available, and make that super clear about what it's about and why it's used and why we're not, and how it's used and how it's going to be used across everybody so that it makes things make sense. And I see a thumbs up from Richard, which is great. So we've got some time, about 10 minutes. So let's quickly have a run past metadata, because metadata be crazy. So I've got 2 pieces of metadata here. Oh, yes, I've got them on the right way. So here we have, oh, yes, this one is perfect. So here we have, now this is not a new XML schema. This is in fact, it's from the 300 data set. It's from Northamptonshire. You can see that the stop points were created in 2003, 2006, but when we look at the created date and the modified date for the file, they're showing us to incredible accuracy on the time. This is down to atomic seconds, but the creation date and the modification date are exactly the same. So this is not allowing us to look at what the time this was, and the modification is new, which it shouldn't be, and its revision is 1, which it should be 0 if it's new. It's just kind of, we're not using metadata as in the right way to allow us to pull the metadata and do useful things with it. And this is kind of one of the things that I just kind of wanted to highlight and just say, when I come to talk to you about metadata, this is the data bit that I'm talking about, and it might need us talking to your suppliers or somebody like Andy to kind of understand where this is going wrong. And you can see here then when we get to stop points, so there's 2 types of metadata. There's metadata for the whole file, and there's metadata for each stop point. And one of the things that we want to look at as well is, if we can see that if we do goodly things with the metadata, do good data practices with what we do with the metadata, it's possible for us to do some really funky stuff with the data, because we can start to pull out for somebody and say, hey, Andy just uploaded this file. It was only these 2 stops that were changed because of their modification dates. Here you go. Here's the 2 stops that changed. You don't need to digest the whole file. So that's kind of our unreachable utopia. It's not even at the tip of my fingertips. Like I can see it, and it's so far out of reach right now. But it's kind of like where we want to head to, is being able to go, hey, these 2 stops changed. Nothing else on this file changed. Just these 2 stops. So have the two changed stops. You don't need to download the whole file, because that's going to be a whole lot more efficient and effective use of the data. Does that make sense to everybody? And do people understand metadata and how it's created within their systems? Or have I gone into the Cody area and you're all running screaming in the opposite direction? And I'll go to Elise first, because their hand was up first.
Yeah, I haven't got far enough into the NaPTAN stuff yet to understand where the metadata sits and how you influence it. We've only just got Omni flag, and we haven't imported the information yet because of the split. Is that something that I'm going to see in there that I can then modify and update?
I believe it should be, but I think we might need to have a conversation with OmniFlag, because this is from the 300, because that was from Northamptonshire before it splits.
Right.
Because I have that XML up and I was looking through it. So we potentially need to go and have a good chat with Omni about how they are handling metadata within their system.
Okay.
Andy, I know that you did some stuff a year or so back to sort some of this out on your system.
Yep. Yeah, my
Yeah.
database is an Oracle then. We've got PostgreSQL now, so I haven't really touched it much since then. I think my stop metadata is good, but my file metadata isn't quite as good.
So maybe that becomes one of the things that we check first as we look at the stop metadata rather than the file metadata, because we know when a file was uploaded, and we know how many files that we've had, and it's the stop point metadata that we start to dig into and just make sure that nobody's giving us stops that have a creation date and a modification date that are the same. And also ensure that, how can I put this, that there are as few variations as possible between the different software on how they handle new and revised going from 0 to 1. Pardon me, in terms of versions. Dan?
Yeah, so for me, I don't care about file metadata at all. It's just not of any interest whatsoever. But the stop metadata is of interest as long as it's going back to accurate and consistently put in across every different software supplier. I think that's one of the biggest problems you have with anything that records is everyone treats something slightly differently, and the problem is start relying on that and trying to do kind of coding against metadata, and someone's got a revision of 0 or 1 and they're different, then you handle it differently. So
Yep.
I think it's important, but at the stop level, but I don't really care about the file level. But I think there needs to be a lot of kind of guidance and schemas and things like that to say how it needs to be did, and it needs to be checked up against.
Yeah, I'm going to nullify you for referring me off to the schemas, but I know that it's kind of mentioned slightly in some of the schemas. What I want to do is just go through and talk to, and I just wanted to check in with yous around this metadata. I'm pleased to hear that the file metadata might not be quite so interesting, and it's the stop point metadata, because that's the stuff to me that's most interesting as well, because what we want to do is kind of look at how revision numbers and modification date time is used, so that we can build things across, and also ensuring that the modification makes sense all the time. So whether it's the status and the modification are actually a really important pairing, and just understanding which way round the various softwares and wanting to use them. We've got a couple of minutes left. Richard, I know that you want to talk because you've come on screen, so I'll throw it to you.
Just to say, I value being able to download NaPTAN data for Northumberland. I still have an interest there, and I usually download a CSV version files, which I can easily sort to quickly discover which stops have changed since the previous download. I find that really quite useful. Although I do wonder why we need such a amazing degree of precision for the timing of the last change. Just the date of the change would be sufficient for me, but others might need more accuracy than that. I don't know.
That is, in fact, a really interesting question, because we do get the dates down to, obviously here down to ridiculous accuracy in terms of the file, but even down to the seconds in terms of your stop points. But I'm also aware of the defaults within software, that when you say I need a creation date time, it will always do date time as hours, minutes, seconds, unless it's talked about. And I don't want to say to anyone, go and change the accuracy of your creation dates, but it becomes one of the things of how how can we work with our suppliers to get these making a bit more sense, so that somebody can consume them in programmatic ways that make a lot of sense, and so that we can also consume it and go, look, here's just the latest files, here's the latest stops that have been updated for 300, here's the latest, or you can say, give me everything that was updated on 300 since this date, and that date can be set by you and be the last time you downloaded the full data set. So it gives you the chance to grab deltas, grab those little differences that have happened, rather than constantly download and process the entirety of the data set. But that's some of what we're thinking. So we've got no minutes left, or almost no minutes left. So super quickly, there's a little feedback corner. What gave you joy? What was good and useful? What frustrated you? What was not good or useful? What made you sad? What things are missing? What things should be happening? We do now have a product owner. I haven't had a chance to put BB's name up there. She is going to be helping out as product owner, and working on NaPTAN hopefully for some time. We're trying not to burn through them quite as quickly as we have been. I think we're on to number 5 already. I'm still here as a service designer. If you need anything, please contact the main data space, the main email address, and not mine. If you need any work done on NaPTAN central stops or MPTG, because if it ends up in my mailbox, I probably don't see it, because I don't read my mail more than maybe once a day if you're super, super lucky. Because most of the time my mailbox is just slammed and I'm slammed as well. So please just email the central, and if you contact me to escalate something, also email the central at the same time, because it means that people actually read that mailbox and pick it up now. So just going to finish off and thank everyone for their time, their patience, their input. It's been really great. Thank you everyone for participating. It makes such a difference to have these going. I am going to stop sharing and turn off recording, and then you can all tell me all the things that you don't want recorded. Record and transcribe, stop recording, stop.